Recording is in progress. We'd like to start and call the WIFA Long-Term Water Augmentation Committee to order. It is now 10:30 a.m. I will call the roll. Patrice Horstman.
Present.
Drew John.
Here.
Pete Kim. We heard a little blip.
Yeah, I'll note for the record that Mr. Kim is online.
Thank you. Stephen Miller. Present. Sue Montgomery.
Here.
And I am here too, Ted Cook. So with 6 members present, the quorum is confirmed. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yes. For the record, please remember to identify yourselves when making a motion or requesting to speak, and please ensure that you are unmuted for any votes. And for those in the room, please remember to leave the microphones on the table for sound quality purposes. In addition, if any member wishes to depart the meeting at any time, please announce your departure for our recorded meeting records. Agenda item number 2, disclosure of conflicts of interest. Has the WIFA staff received any such disclosures?
Morning, Joe Soteli, General Counsel. No disclosures have been submitted for today's meeting.
Thank you. If any member would like to identify and disclose a conflict for any of the items on today's agenda, you may do so at this time. Seeing none, we'll move to the next agenda item, the director's report. Director McGuire.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Not a lot to report. I do want to note for, obviously everyone on this committee was in the board meeting, but in case there was anybody online who was not, the board did take action on the in-state augmentation loans as recommended by the committee. So that is good news to know that we're going forward on that. And do want to note for the committee that we have not forgotten the request to bring back to you subsequent funding cycles for those loans and for that conversation. I anticipate that we will have the time to bring that back to you probably in the next meeting that we have. We'll talk about that in agenda setting. We don't quite know the timing of that meeting yet, but there will be an opportunity to discuss that in the near future. Other than that, I'm happy to take questions from committee members.
Are there any questions from the committee for Director McGuire? Seeing none, then we will move to the regular agenda. Members of the public wishing to speak on a specific topic may submit a speaker's card prior to the chair opening discussion on that item. For instructions on how to submit a speaker's card, please refer to the notes on proceedings section of today's agenda. So we will have today on agenda item number 4, scope of work templates for task orders 0 through 4. That will comprise agenda item number 4, sub items A through E, task order 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. For the record, and for those who have maybe signed into this meeting to watch and are not aware of what happened earlier, this committee has already had a chance to review task orders 0 through 4 at 2 previous meetings on April 1st and April 9th. This will be our 3rd time, and our goal today is to finalize a recommendation, to the board on these 5 task orders 0 through 4. We also will be taking a look on agenda item number 5 for the first time on task order number 5, which is the financial scope task order. So with no further ado, let's proceed with agenda item number 4, and Director McGuire will lead the discussion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So I didn't put up the mall walking you are here sign on this presentation, but as the chairman just mentioned, so the goal of today is for the committee to take its action on the scopes of work for the first 4 of our substantive task orders. So the task orders regarding technical evaluations, environmental and cultural evaluations, regulatory evaluations, and society and community evaluations. As a reminder, this is not the finalization of the task order. So if the committee today recommends that these are approved as the scopes of work, these are then given to the developer teams to fill out. They are essentially fill in the blank. Right now, they're 12 pages apiece. Once we get them back from the developers, they will be in the dozens or more of pages a piece as we get more information from them of how they're actually going to give us the information that we request from these scopes of work. The goal for today is for the committee to approve these first 4. I guess I should say first 5 because task order 0 supplement is included in that as well. That'll give us the ability to give the developer teams the go ahead and say, this is the scope, start filling it out to keep on our timeline of having those prepared and final scopes or final task orders for you as the board in July. So you saw in the committee book for today, red lines of each of these scopes of work. The red lines represented both the changes that we presented to you at the prior meeting and also the changes that we made as a result of the discussion that we had at that meeting. So just to give some high-level bullet points, and my friends over at HDR, feel free to add, supplement, correct anything that I'm saying here. Major changes to the scope outlines that you saw before you this week were refinement of what's meant by political obstacles. That was a discussion that we had as a committee. Expansion of the definition of physical barriers in task 1, so that includes now not just man-made barriers, but also natural barriers, canyons, ravines, that sort of thing. We also made some clarification to our treatment of tribal entities. We were using that term inartfully, I think, across the task orders. So now anytime we are referring to a tribal entity, instead we will say tribal governments throughout all of the task orders to make it very clear that we consider that to be tribal governments treated as government entities, sovereign nations, and therefore also making it clear that that falls under WIFA's scope of coordination, just like other government entities that we're working with throughout this process. Also, as a result of our conversation, you will see that we removed all upper basin entities from the task or the stakeholder list in task 4. What we didn't do and what you won't see is sort of a blanket thou shalt not statement across the task orders regarding upper basin stakeholders. One, that's because we will be doing that kind of information and that kind of interaction with our development teams themselves, making those expectations very clear. And the more appropriate place to put and to memorialize something like that will be in working with there's a single development team that's implicated by this. We'll work with them in their contracting language specific to task 0 and their payment obligations or their lump sum payment under task 0 to make sure that that scope is accurate. So you won't see something that explicit in the task orders, but you do see something very explicit in terms of just removing all of the upper basin entities from that stakeholder list. So those were the changes that we made in order to reflect the conversation that we had at the last meeting. At this point, I'd be happy for the HDR team to expand on anything that may be important that I missed, or for the committee to give us their thoughts on whether this accurately reflected your expectations.
In general, yes, please.
I
Mr. John.
appreciate the political obstacles being taken care of, because the political atmosphere we have now, not so much in Arizona, but throughout the country, but it worries me that we'll have those obstacles come up and not be able to proceed any farther until that's taken care of, and we're going to run into that. That's going to, I think the other work's going to be a little easier than that part of it myself, dealing in politics all these years. And I'm glad and I appreciate you putting those in, because that was a big concern that I had in the early part of this project. So I appreciate that. And then once you put it at the end too, I appreciate that. So I went through it, and you took what we said in our meetings literally and put it in there, and it worked out really well. So I appreciate the time that you spend on it. It's unbelievable, all of this stuff. I might be bragging, but I get about 25% of it. It's about all I understand. And feel lucky there. Yeah.
That's good. That's really good.
Told you I was bragging.
Yeah.
But, and I'm lucky there, but I appreciate all the work, and it's amazing. I was talking to Scott and telling him it's amazing that their staff can do so much, and remember these things and be able to do the work that you're talking about. It's unbelievable to me. I've read it 3 times and had to read it again. Thank you, though.
Any other committee members have any comments on the additional changes that have been made since the last meeting on task orders 0 through 4? And I see Ms. Montgomery is nodding her head. You submitted some substantial comments the last round. I wanted to particularly make sure that you were satisfied with the disposition of those comments.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Sue Montgomery. Yes, and I have to compliment the whole team for, scraping through my comments when some of them were, I'm just coming back up to speed. And I appreciate that. I appreciate the recognition of tribal governments. I think that's very important. I think they play a role in this whole process. And so that was very thoughtful in terms of how that was addressed. Some of my other smaller comments were taken seriously, and I'm appreciative of that as well. I just personally want to comment that the amount of work that's happened between when I was working on this on the committee prior and when coming back is an immense amount of work. And all of WIFA should really be, and the HDR team's just commended for that. I said that in the committee, but I'll say it again here, this time. It really should be commended. It's a tremendous amount of work and a lot of thought. And like anything we do, we'll probably get something wrong, but we're doing our very best. And that's it. And it's good work. Finally, that flow chart illustrating how the water physically and legally and operationally moves is going to be really a huge tool for us. I don't know who identified that previously that needed to be in there, but that was a good add as well. And wanted to flag that. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other committee members like to make any comments on task order 0 through 4? As I mentioned at the beginning of this agenda item, our goal for this agenda item is to make a recommendation to the board for adoption of these task orders to the base contracts. And of course, the board will have a chance at its next meeting, assuming that we do that today, at its next meeting to take these 5 task orders under consideration. So
I'll actually correct that, Mr. Chairman. These will not go to the full board.
They don't go to
So
the
once
full
the
board.
committee approves these go to the developers.
developers, okay,
The
right.
developers do their
We need
work.
to be looking at the.
And then, I know, I should have put the chart
flow
up.
chart, yeah.
And then the board will approve the completed task orders because those are the vehicles through which we will be compensating the team. So of course, the board will need to approve every jot and tittle of those. But once these scopes of work are approved by the committee, these are the scopes, they go forward to the teams, and this becomes the shell of those task orders.
Okay, thanks for that correction.
Of course.
And as long as we're passing out accolades here too, and I agree, of course, with the appreciation for the work that the staff and HDR has done, and there are other consultants too have been heavily involved. And we're going to hear from another one today on task order 5. So you have a high bar to meet, E&Y. Just warn you ahead of time. But I'm very pleased, I think, with all the feedback that we received, which was of course gone through the fine tooth comb by the staff and the consultants, from the developers themselves, from the off-taker working group, and also from the public. This is why this process works, and that brings a great deal of, I think, comfort and confidence to me as a committee member and a board member, and I'm sure this is similar for other committee members and board members, that when we have that level of feedback, it helps us to make the kind of decisions that we need to make with all of this. There's many comments about the volume of this work. There's a lot to go through, and we don't necessarily have a lot of time. We have the time that we need and no more, but I appreciate that level of feedback that we get during this process, so that we can be confident in the decisions that we make, that they've been thoroughly looked at by all the folks that are involved. So I would entertain a motion for agenda items. Before we do that, do we have any public comment on any of these items individually or in aggregate?
There are no comments on this item.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go back to what I was just saying. I would entertain a motion on agenda items 4A through E as a single motion. If we can do that, I think we can. Well, I'll leave it to the motion maker to make the motion.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, please, Patrice.
Yes, Patrice Horseman, I would at this time move to approve task order scope of work templates, task order 0 through task order 4, as set forth as A through E on the agenda.
Thank you.
And then Drew John, I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Are there any other comments or questions from the committee members before we take a vote? Seeing none. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any in opposition? Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. So we will be moving on then to agenda item number 5, task order 5. This is our first look at this task order, and Director McGuire will lead the discussion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As you said, this is the first glance that we've had at task order 5, the financial scope of work template. We wanted to make sure that we were looping in and very heavily involving financial advisors for the long-term augmentation fund before we brought this to you, which meant we had to get those financial advisors, which took a little bit of time, but we are thrilled to introduce today our folks from EY, Ernst & Young, who are on the line with us. Stephen, I will let you introduce your team and who else is on when it comes time. Denise, do you have anything you want to say or kind of foundation you want to set before we just turn it over to EY for this conversation?
No, I think you covered it well. Nothing to add.
Okay, that sounds great. So Stephen, I know I have you on as panelist. If there's anybody else from your team who needs to have a panelist ability on this call, just use the raise hand feature and we'll promote you. But from there, I'll let you take it over.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be here, albeit virtually. My name's Stephen Orton-Smith. I'm one of the partners in the infrastructure advisory practice at EY. I lead our work in sustainable infrastructure nationally. We're absolutely thrilled to have been appointed to advise you on this project. It's probably by far the most exciting project we have on our portfolio. So we're raring to go and very excited about what's coming next. I'm the primary speaker today, but I think on the call we have a couple of other members of the EY team, David Catt, Rich Lopaitin, and others. So you'll see more than me in the course of this engagement. But for today, I'm the face of EY. So with that, we've been in place for about a week and a half, and we've been focused on task order 5, the cost, financial, and commercial evaluation component of the process. So I think the idea, Chelsea, was to provide a brief overview of what this is, what's intended to cover, what we expect back, and what we'll do with it. So if that resonates with people, I will spend a few minutes on that.
Sounds great.
Thank you. So first thing is, task order 5 is really about the financial and commercial aspects of the proposals that are being developed through task orders 0 through 4. So whilst they address the majority of the financial and commercial matters that crystallize in these projects, task order 5 is fundamentally dependent on and connected to a number of the other task orders. As the projects develop in maturity, we will be better able to understand the financial consequences of those projects, better understand how they're going to be delivered, how they're going to be financed, what the commercial contracting environment looks like, and what the risk and deliverability profile of the projects are. So similarly to task orders 1 through 4, task order 5 works on a 3-stage process. Stage 1, preliminary analysis. Stage 2, more developed. Stage 3, more refined. And the idea is that these stages will dovetail with those equivalent counterparts in tasks 1 through 4, such that by the time we get to the end of the appraisal phase, we should have a pretty solid understanding of the relative merits of the proposals from a financial and commercial perspective, and a fairly good sense in an absolute way of what the risks to successful delivery are, so that the authority can then make any decisions it wishes to at that point and move forward into the more detailed phases that follow. So really, task order 5 has 3 key components. One is the financial plan. That is predominantly focused around trying to establish what the effective financial envelope of the project will be. So effectively, what is the cost of water that's going to flow to the ratepayers and the off-takers of Arizona as a result of these projects? Now, that will be embedded in a financial model, which will include capital costs, operating costs, financing costs, tax consequences, et cetera, to build up a required revenue analysis for the developers. So the developers will be telling us effectively how much revenue they need in order to build, finance, and operate the projects that they're proposing. That can then translate into what does that mean in terms of cost per acre foot? What does that mean for off-takers? What does that mean for affordability? Now, we have to be a little bit patient here, because obviously in task 1, we're still working at a class 5 estimate level. there's going to be a wide variety of uncertainties in some of the underlying costs of these projects for a while. So what we're seeking to do is to start with a relatively strong foundation, and then as costs, CapEx, OpEx costs, financing strategy crystallize and resolve themselves over the course of this phase, we can then refine, update, and iterate the financial analysis. A key part of this is understanding what the uncertainties and risks are in the underlying cash flow estimate. So we can start to provide an envelope or confidence interval type analysis, which suggests where affordability or where rate costs are likely to end up. So it won't be definitive, but it will give you a guide to the anticipated envelope of cost, and then we can seek to narrow that envelope of uncertainty over time as costs become more developed, as design becomes more developed. So that's first part. Second part is the commercial plan, and that is effectively a commercial feasibility analysis. And the idea here is to look at all of the key commercial stakeholders in the projects that are being put forward. Now, these projects have a wide range of commercial stakeholders, not just construction and operations, but also water rights, creation and transfer, potentially third-party off-takers, subject to a wide range of commercial agreements that will need to be in place to turn an engineering concept into a commercially deliverable reality. Now, each of these projects then includes a multitude of potential commercial counterparties of varying financial strengths, qualities, motivations, etc. So what we'll be doing is looking at the commercial environment within which these projects are being developed, understanding who the key commercial stakeholders are, begin to understand what those contracts will look like, understand who takes what risks within those contracts, and making sure that the people taking those commercial risks have the financial standing and capability to effectively manage those risks and deliver the projects. Because ultimately, a quoted price per acre foot of water only has meaning if there's a commercial structure capable of delivering a project at that price. So the commercial plan, the commercial feasibility analysis, is really about making sure that there is a commercial environment and a contracting environment that is capable of delivering water at the prices quoted. The third strand is then really about the project delivery plan. And this builds in part off the first two components, the financial analysis and the commercial analysis. But the idea here is to ensure that developers are taking ownership of the entire solution. So for example, what are the risks to the successful delivery of the project? If the project is capable of delivery, what are the risks that are inherent within that project, and how are they effectively identified, mitigated, and managed and allocated to appropriate parties? Does the state of Arizona, does WIFA understand what risks it's bearing in this environment, and how can it effectively manage the residual risks that are landing with it? So ultimately, this is about wrapping the commercial feasibility analysis and the financial analysis together with a three-dimensional risk and deliverability analysis to make sure that we are forming a three-dimensional view of how these projects will be delivered, what the cost of it is, how the risks inherent in those projects will be managed, and being able to articulate for the benefit of the ratepayers of Arizona what the cost and risks are retained at the state level. And I'll pause there.
Thank you.
Let's see, Mr. Kim has his hand up.
Mr. Kim, please, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Stephen, thank you for that overview. And just a couple of questions from my side. It really seems like the financial plan is really just about the P&L or the projected P&L. What is this going to look like from a costs and revenues, or like basically like what is the cash flows and all that stuff. The second one is going to be, is that going to make sense in the marketplace? Is that, can we actually sell this thing, and like are people going to like pick it up? And then the third one is really just a risk analysis around like, can they actually deliver on these things? Throughout, one thing that I'd like to see throughout all these is comps. right? Comparables around all these different types of things. It's one thing just to look at a set of numbers, but it's always helpful to understand how these compare to other similar projects to the extent that those exist at all. But like at least the best efforts go to make sure that we can understand that like this is right in line with market norms or with like other comparable projects in the last 10 years or whatever the appropriate time frame may be. I think for both the financial plan and the commercial plan would give the board a lot more comfort that beyond just the numbers themselves. I'm sure that was already part of the plan, but just to call it out specifically. Thank you.
Yep. Great point. Absolutely. We can do that.
Any other committee members have any comments or suggestions, questions on the presentation today or any of the material that we received in advance of the meeting? I do. And I won't take a lot of time here because I've already delivered in writing some questions and suggestions to the staff who I believe will pass it on. But I wanted to summarize it for the record, just in case there may be some inkling that any other of the committee members might have with respect to these things. So, and my written comments have got references and page numbers, so they're all pretty specific. So, in summary, I had some suggestions on the financial model and the financial plan and the kind of logical orders of steps that have appeared in the. Are we ready for this yet, or do we have another slide here? It's a question for you, Stephen. I think more than anybody.
I think we had, there was one more slide, but to be honest, I've covered most of those points, so I don't think we need to labor it. We can move on if you're okay with that.
Then I'll keep going, and I will be brief here. So on the financial plan and the model and the order of the logical order of the various steps that are taken in putting that together, I just had a few suggestions in that area that made more sense to me. Take it or leave it. Some nitpicking on the use of the word, developing opinions on the likelihood of the project cost approaching the upper and lower bounds of the cost estimate uncertainty ranges. This, of course, is a good thing to do. That at various stages, Class 5 and the Class 4 estimates that we have got an pertinent range of certainty that goes with that, and let's just say it's not necessarily a linear relationship between the low end of the range and the high end of the range, because it's composed of many pieces of individual cost elements and things like that. I wouldn't use the word opinion for something like that because I think it is more. I actually think it is more quantitative than an opinion. So I'll leave it up to you about what a better word for that might be. And I've given some philosophical underpinnings for that I don't need to go through here. In both the commercial plan and the project delivery plan too, and I've made this comment before on the other task orders, to me there needs to be a more explicit discussion about the legal and contractual and not so much regulatory framework that needs to go around and describe how does the water that is created by the various water importation projects at its origin get to its point of origin, not physically, but contractually and legally, get from its point of origin to its point of use in Arizona. Most of these projects, if not all of them, are relying upon a Colorado River exchange. But as I've said before, there are many steps to get it from, say, a desal plant on the coast of California or in the Sea of Cortez into Mexico, and all the counterparties that have to be involved in between there. I think it's probably covered in the broad sense, but needs to be, in my opinion, more explicit about that. And a long comment on one of the bullets that appeared in, I think, the project delivery plan. No, it would be the commercial plan about sales of with water outside of Arizona, and without addressing the question I have about whether or not that's legally permissible for us to do that. I don't, because most of our projects are that augmented supply is developed and it is consumed in its entirety by the location where it's created and then that is exchanged or otherwise transported into Arizona and all of it is used. I wouldn't classify that as a sale. So the purpose of this discussion of sales and the documents that we're looking at is to reduce costs. And I think that's a noble thing to do, but I don't know, there's this legal question and that's not where I was getting at. It was theoretically in my mind, we could go on for a long time enlarging and enlarging and enlarging projects to sell more of the water that is generated, the augmented supply, locally without nothing but money coming back to Arizona. I don't know necessarily that that was the intent of the statutory intent of these investments. It was to bring water to Arizona, and while saving costs is a good thing to do, I don't know that this is, so I would like the teams to talk about that a little bit more. And I don't know that sales of water outside Arizona needs the prominence of having its own bullet and should be maybe baked into something else, such as what I was referred to earlier, which is how do you get the water from point A to point B so that it can be used in Arizona. And then under risk evaluation and monitoring, I had some comments there similar to ones that I've had in earlier task orders about literally risk evaluation and monitoring. And I just had some suggestions there about terminology and so on and so forth from my experience in those areas. And one particular thing is the use of the word mitigation has a specific meaning, and it shouldn't be used as a shorthand for all the things that might be done with risk. The disposition of risk includes mitigation, but includes a lot of other things. So that all of those comments appear in my. Now I also have, now this is more for the staff. The addendum to task 0 that we are producing as part of task order 5. We just voted to finalize task order 0. I suppose we could have waited to do that until we were done with task order 5. It's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. So I assume what we're going to do is just we did 0 through 4. We'll do what we need to do on task order 5. And oh, by the way, that will include an update to task 0 that goes back, and we'll have to, I think, approve a task order supplement as part of our approval of task order 5 at some point. I think I answered my own question. So just for the record, I thank you for bearing with me on summarizing that for the record. And I was hoping maybe that might jar some question that somebody else had thought of about, oh yeah, why don't you bring that up, Ted? I did have this other question. Maybe not. So I will ask one more time if any of the other committee members have any comments on the material that we received. And let me just clarify it with Director McGuire. Is this a one and done for us if we're comfortable with doing it, or do we have a chance to come back and look at whatever might be incorporated or changed from this meeting?
It's not a one and done. So we do not anticipate that you will give us the green light on this today. We wanted your input. We're also receiving input from the developer teams. So similar to the other task orders where they were provided to you and the development teams at the same time, the development teams have had a few days to look at this. We will have scoping meetings with each of the development teams where we can go back and forth with them in real time about what this outline looks like and whether it's consistent with their expectations and their needs. I anticipate we will make some changes to the outlines based on the initial comments we've received from the developers. So we'll be bringing this back to you at least one more time. The question I would have for you is whether you feel you want us to do the same cadence we did with the others, which was initial meeting, second meeting where there was maybe a little bit more conversation, and then third meeting to approve, or whether you think we can just bring it back to you one more time and approve it at that next meeting whenever we're ready to bring it back. So I'd be open to suggestions on that, but no, this is not a one and done for today, for sure.
Okay, any advice or suggestions from the committee members to the staff about how many more times we would like to look at this? I will say that I think that the methodology that the staff and the consultants used the last time to give us kind of a roadmap to here's the comments that we received, here's what we did with them, so that we don't basically have to start from first word on the first page again and go through everything. Was very helpful for us to be able to get that done. I personally think we can probably do that with one more meeting if it's brought to us in that manner. Any other thoughts? Okay, to the staff or E&Y, I'm sorry, I will say E&Y because I said it 10,000 times in my life already, have any additional material they want to present on this task order?
Nothing from us at this time.
Okay.
Nothing
Anything else
from
from the
us.
committee members? Okay, then let's move on to agenda item number 6, call to the public. This is the time for additional public comments. They will be limited to 3 minutes. Are there any requests that we've received for public comment?
No request on this item. I would note that you can use the QR code on the screen to submit any public comments, notwithstanding this meeting.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move to agenda item number 7, agenda development. Director McGuire mentioned some of the things that are, other things that are on this committee's plate besides task order 5, that we'll have at least one more meeting on that. And I guess that will be a TBD, and there will be some discussion offline among the staff and probably with me as the chair about, can we wait till the May board meeting or do we need to do something in between? And what's the availability of committee members? And then we have this pending discussion that is, I think, moving up in line as far as priority to continue the conversation on what the next funding cycles for the in-state water augmentation program might look like now that we basically finalized the most recent funding cycle with the board's decisions earlier this morning. Do the committee have any other topics that they would like to have a discussion about agendizing besides those 2?
Sounds good.
Okay, plate's full enough for right now, it sounds like. So next meetings, moving into next meetings, agenda item number 8. We almost certainly, I think, will have another committee meeting at the time of the May board meeting. But I don't know if there will be another one or 2 possibly between now and then. Those will, we'll get more news about that as these offline planning discussions occur among the staff and the consultants. So if there's nothing else, we will move to, at this point in time, probably our favorite agenda item. And good work, everyone, for a very efficient morning. This is, when you think about what we did today, both as a board and the committee, this is some really important things, particularly with the background of what is going on. We're doing the work that we have been appointed and or engaged to do at, in my opinion, a very efficient pace, but also a very deliberate and considerate and careful pace and thorough pace. So with no further ado, we'll adjourn this meeting of the Long-Term Water Augmentation Committee, and the time is now 11:08.